Standard 4 has to do with resources and materials. So these are going to be the learning resources that you give to your students in order to master the learning outcomes. So for example, we have some notes, and we have some more notes with links to external sites. There are links to some videos at various parts in the mini course, and so on. And we want to make sure that all of the learning outcomes that the module is supposed to be teaching are actually supported by learning materials. We're not going to ask the student to master a learning outcome unless we provide them with the information that they need to master that learning outcome. So once again, it's a matter of alignment between the instructional materials and the learning outcomes that we're asking the student to master. Standard 5 has to do with learner engagement. And there are a couple of ways that we can foster learner engagement in our classes. One of the key ways is to have discussion groups in your course. So for example, student-to-student interaction and student-to-instructor interaction really helps to engage some students in the learning resources and the learning activities. And we see that this course does use discussion boards. There's an introduce yourself discussion, and there's also a copyright scenarios discussion in week 2. But we could actually make this a little better. We could provide additional opportunities for students to interact and to engage with the material. We can also provide more diverse activities that are going to help keep the students engaged. Standard 6 has to do with course technology, and primarily whether the course is easy to navigate, whether it's consistent, whether the tools are being used correctly, and so on. So let's return back to this content tab and go to module 2 again, and we notice that, well, module 2, it's missing a lot of stuff. I mean, it's basically got some learning materials, doesn't have a statement of learning outcomes, and there are no real activities here for the student to complete. I mean, there's no discussion board for module 2, there's no assignment that they're going to fill out and submit to the Dropbox. There's just some learning materials and no real assessment, no real learning activities. Now it turns out that there are actually some learning activities. Under discussions, this copyright scenarios activity actually is a module 2 activity. And under Dropbox, this copyright scenarios Dropbox is actually also a module 2 activity, but they're not correctly linked to from the module 2 page. So we're not actually using the tools correctly here in order to present a logical, consistent, easy to navigate view on the course materials. Standard 7 has to do with learner support, and most of learner support has to do with linking to the correct student resources to support the student and to help them be successful in your course. So let's go ahead and look at the course, and there really is nothing on student resources. There's nothing about the faculty help or the student help desk. There's nothing about tutorial services, guidance, counseling, nothing about disability services, except maybe in the syllabus there's probably something about disability services. There is, but very, very little in terms of providing the student with links to services that they need to be successful. So that's something that we're going to look at in Standard 7 as well. And finally, Standard 8 has to do with accessibility. Are all the course materials presented in a form that's going to be accessible to students that have varieties of impairments? So for example, in the syllabus there's this grading criteria section, and this is basically just a blob of text as far as a screen reader is concerned. So a blind student is going to use a screen reader to read through this page, and a screen reader can make use of the structure of the document to allow a blind student to navigate through the page. So it will know that this header here is an important thing, and the student can skip from this header down to this subheader, to this next subheader, to this header, and so on. But there's no header here. This is just bold text. And this isn't laid out as a list or a table, so it's just a blob of text. And this is going to be an obstacle to a student who's using a screen reader to access this content. So we're going to talk about accessibility issues as part of Standard 8, and we're going to look at cleaning some of those things up, as well as how to author accessible content that all of your students can benefit from.